and I think there's abuses of power that need to be addressed.
Yeah, I agree with that. But wouldn't you agree with me that one of the main problems, it's like India, where I've been, I had the biggest problem is with the violent Hindus, especially the Hindu sect in Nagpur, which is the city of the serpent. And I went there, and the leaders of the violent sect turned up at my meetings and sat in the front. But when they saw blind eyes open, deaf ears unstopped, people healed, they just sat there and approved. And they'd burnt 2 missionaries to death, Canadian missionaries, a year earlier on the streets. So there is a sense in which I think what is the problem in Pakistan is the government don't know how to react. They're very impotent at the moment. And the other thing is education is so lacking. The Christians don't get a chance for education because of the prejudice. You can't become a lecturer in a college unless you're a Muslim. So there's many things that are restrictive, and we need to come back to the real thing, that the average person being uneducated is led by the mosque and by the imam in the mosque, and they become really the rulers, and they impose things. And the people being uneducated, a lot of them can't read and write, and therefore they're at a great disadvantage, especially in the villages. And so what we need is to really bring the whole of the population into the 20th century and bring it into, well, we're further than the 20th century, but 21st, and bring it into reality.
Yes.
Education, medicine is appalling in Pakistan, but it's gone back, it's in the dark ages because it's controlled by a religious tyranny.
If I can interject this,
what would you add to that?
I'm glad you've mentioned education. It's one of the things that B.P.C.A has been campaigning for, and we do have a petition on our blog site that if people want to tap into, they can sign that. It's an electronic petition. One of the things that we're concerned about is that there are Western countries pumping money into Pakistan to bring about a level of parity of opportunity and education. Yet that money is being squandered. Where it's very the traceability is missing. But more to the point, interesting statistics are that only 7% of minority faith groups have achieved a level of literacy, whereas if you look at the majority Muslim, even though that is lower than your average Westerner, it has at least 50% of them have achieved a level of literacy. That disparity needs to be rectified, and I personally would like to see Western governments that are providing this funding for education to ensure that there is proper redress for that balance to be amended. So funding doesn't just go to improving education, education in Pakistan, better qualifications, etc., but to actually reduce that gap too, so that there is this equal opportunity. If everyone has an equal level of literacy, then they can apply for exactly the same jobs as the Muslim majority, and that I think needs to be addressed. One other thing that I've always felt that we do need to look at is why this level of illiteracy occurs with minority faith groups. One of the particular reasons that we've raised with MEP Jean Lambert recently and with the Pakistani High Commissioner is the fact that there seems to be a reticence to send children to schools where they believe a level of proselytization is going to occur, where a mandatory study will be required as a mandatory practice that you study Islamic studies, and also there's always pressure from students as well, and various threats, and parents don't want to put their children into that position, and they can't afford the education. In the old days, there used to be a large number of Christian schools in Pakistan. These have been taken away and made into public schools, but while they were Christian schools, they would provide subsidized training or education to the Christian minority in particular, but also to other minorities, for those that were in impoverished conditions. And I just think that that opportunity has now gone. But I'm sure Alex has got an interesting point on this education too.
Yeah, I mean, I think the issue with education is, whereas there used to be a number of places for minorities previously, they've been drastically reduced. So it's not that there
Are
aren't...
you talking about all over Pakistan? Are you saying again in Punjab, in that area where the persecution is?
all over Pakistan.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, where there are Christian schools, and you have to remember there was a nationalisation process in the 80s and 90s of all schools. Just recently, there's been a trend back to denationalisation of schools. So some Christian schools, at least in name, have been given back to some of the Christian organisations that are
But they're
present in the
also,
country.
at the present time, taking over properties they consider valuable that are Christian
Indeed.
properties.
Yeah.
So I know exactly what's
Yeah.
going on.
Yeah.
You know, it's a sham
Yeah.
for political reasons. They're taking over real good high-class properties which the Christians own. They're grabbing hold of them, of the Roman Catholic Church and of
The Church of Pakistan,
yeah, the Church of
Presbyterian
Pakistan.
Church, yeah, indeed.
And so there's that. So you've got to balance it so people realise that it is an aggressive move by the Muslims.
Now, why is it you said that it's in the Punjab area, that the persecution? Why would you say it's concentrated there? What's the roots of it?
Strangely, it's because in the Punjab, people tend to be much more
Emotive.
one, emotional, but two, also radical
You're talking to
in their
Punjabi
thinking.
here, but from
Yeah,
India, but
I mean, we're all from Punjab
All
in
right.
that sense. So
So
you
you're
know,
radical.
yeah. So you know, we all have quite fundamental beliefs, and
understand,
we're
yeah.
quite entrenched in those.